So just recapping the development of the prenatal brain. So the period of development is a time of physical growth, but what exactly is going on? So inside the brain is a critical future psychological development. The brain development takes place during the prenatal period and helps set the course of what will take place outside the womb. So the question is, what factors do you think influence the developing brain? So considering an important part of the development process, prenatal development is a time for remarkable change that helps set the stage for future psychological development. We continue to go on through changes through the early years of childhood, adolescence, puberty, early adulthood, and through the lifespan. The process of pre-development occurs in three main stages. And the first 2 weeks after conception, known as the germinal stage, from the 3rd week through the 8th week is known as embryonic period. The 9th week until birth is known as fetal period. In the germinal stage begins at conception when the sperm and egg cell unite in one of the two fallopian tubes. Fertilized egg is called a zygote. Just a few hours after conception, a single-cell zygote begins making a journey down the fallopian tube to the uterus. Cell division begins approximately 24 to 36 hours, according to research, after conception, through the process of mitosis. The zygote first divides into 2 cells, then 4, 8, 16, and so on. A significant number of zygotes never progress past this early stage, according to research of cell division, with as many of half of all the zygotes surviving less than 2 weeks. Once the 8-cell point has been reached, the cells begin to differentiate and take on certain characteristics will determine the type of cells they'll eventually become. As the cells multiply, they will also separate to 2 distinctive masses. The outer cells will eventually become the placenta, while the inner cells will form the embryo. So the cell division continues in the germinal stage at a rapid rate, what is known as blastocyte. The blastocyte is made up of 3 layers, which develops in different structures in the body. The ectoderm is the skin and nervous system. The endoderm is the digestive and respiratory systems. The mesoderm is the muscle and skeletal systems. The blastocyte arrives at the uterus and attaches to the uterine wall, and implantation occurs when the cells nestle in the uterine lining and rupture tiny blood vessels. The connective web of the blood vessels and membranes that form between them will provide nourishment for the developing being for the next 9 months. Hormonal changes halt the normal menstrual cycle and cause a whole host of physical changes. The embryonic stage, at this point, the mast cells is known as an embryo. The beginning of the 3rd week after conception marks the state or start of the embryonic period, a time when massive cells become distinct as human. The embryonic stage plays an important role in development of the brain. Approximately 4 weeks after conception, the neural tube forms, which will later develop into the CNS, including the spinal cord and brain. The neural tube begins to form along with a lesser-known area of the neural plate. The earliest signs of development of the neural tube are the emergence of 2 ridges that form along each side of the neural plate. Over the next few days, more ridges form and fold inward until a hollow tube is formed. Once the tube is fully formed, cells begin to form near the center, and the tube begins to close, and brain vesicles are formed. The vesicles will eventually develop into structures of the forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain, as we discussed before. Around the 4th week, the head begins to form, quickly followed by the eyes, nose, and mouth. The blood vessels that will become the heart start to pulse. During the 5th week, buds that form will form the arms, and the legs appear. The embryonic stage, by the 8th week of development, the embryo has all the basic organs and parts except for those of the sex organs. At this point, the embryo weighs just approximately 1 gram and is about 1 inch in length. By the end of the embryonic period, the basic structures of the brain and CNS, central nervous system, have been established. And at this point, the basic structure of the PNS is also defined. The production of neurons begins around the 42 day after conception and is mostly complete sometime around the middle of pregnancy. As neurons form, they migrate to different areas of the brain. Once they have reached the current location, they begin to form connection with other neural cells, establishing rudimentary neural networks. The fetal stage, once cell differentiation is mostly complete, the embryo enters the next stage and becomes known as a fetus. This period of development begins during the 9th week and lasts until birth and is marked by amazing change and growth. The early body systems and structures established in the embryonic stage continue to develop, and the neural tube develops into the brain and spinal cord, and neurons continue to form. Once the neurons have formed, they begin to migrate into their correct locations. Synapse connections between neurons also begin to develop. Between 9th and 12th week of gestation, reflexes begin to emerge, and the fetus begins to make reflexive motions with its arms and legs. During the 3rd month of the gestation, the sex organs begin to differentiate. By the end of the month, all parts of the body will be formed. The fetus weighs around 3 ounces at this point. The fetus continues to grow in both weight and length, although the majority of physical growth occurs later stages of pregnancy. The end of the 3rd month also marks the end of the 1st trimester of pregnancy. During the 2nd trimester, or 4 months, 6 months, the heartbeat grows stronger and other body systems begin to develop. Fingernails, hair, eyelashes, toenails form. Perhaps most notably, the fetus increases 6 times in size. The brain and central nervous system also become more responsive during the 2nd trimester at around 28 weeks. The brain starts to mature fast in activity that greatly resembles that of sleeping newborn. During the period from 7 months until birth, the fetus continues to develop, put on weight, prepare for life outside the womb. The lungs begin to expand and contract, preparing muscles for breathing. While development usually follows this normal pattern, there are times when problems with development may possibly potentially occur. Okay, so now we've got a research activity to do. So what I'd like you to do for this research activity, we're going to watch a video shortly, and the research activity is going to be for you to go away and investigate what can potentially go wrong with development at different stages. So we'll separate in groups. We've got group 1, the germinal stage. You can do some research, look into the literature and find out what could be possible problems in development for the germinal stage. Group 2, the embryonic stage, what could potentially go wrong at that stage. And group 3, the fetal stage. And I want you to think about the influences, development socially and biologically.